The National Forensic Laboratory is going to be cut. This A5 road to Derry is going to be cut. But it's a lot of smoke and mirrors and not a lot of detail. And we still don't have a logical explanation how a minister gets a memo saying something is over budget by 392 million in August, and he doesn't tell his Minister of Finance till the 9th of November. It seems we haven't got the full story yet.
Well, we don't have the full story, and I do think that it is correct that the minister in charge of his department has to take full responsibility for everything that happened, and therefore I do think Simon Harris should be put out of health. He should be told he has to go. But look, it isn't just stopping at Simon Harris. There's something deeply rotten with the public procurement process in this country. And if you look back on the history of overspends on broadband, on the M50, on the Port Tunnel, on the Lewis Cross City, there has been, and maybe Colin McCarthy knows a bit about this, but there has been a public procurement process that I think is called lowballing, but then always carries out a higher and higher price. And this company that are running the project in the hospital, in the Children's Hospital, are notorious for this.
Well, no, sorry, we have a record. We can't say they're notorious for it because we need the facts on all of the other.
They have a track record of
there are a number of contractors.
And there's a number of contractors involved in the consortium.
I'm talking about the main contractor. And somebody just said, I think it was Hildegard said, we have to wait for PwC to investigate it. PwC have a long-standing relationship with the main contractor and a long-standing relationship with HSE and are paid by both.
Colin McCarthy,
and it doesn't make sense to me that they would...
You've written about this, saying that blaming Simon Harris is a...
Today.
Well, Brid,
it's very mealy-mouthed and it's completely inadequate.
This is the thing. Sorry, this is the thing. What's adequate about it is actually getting to the truth and finding people accountable. No. What I'm saying to you, Brid, is your solution and Sinn Féin's solution was simply shoot first and ask questions later. We want to get to the fact of it, and most of this information would not have even been in the public domain.
So why are you not objecting to $500,000 going to PwC to investigate a company with whom they have a long-standing relationship?
Can I answer that, Brid?
What I'd say is
whoever it is, the decision was taken to have external consultants look at the problem here. About €450,000 will be spent, a lot of money, right?
The external consultants are a problem.
That is a lot of money. Well, let's see what they come back with. We changed the terms of reference of that. At Stephen Donnelly's insistence was about looking at how we can actually bring back the costs, because government are actually saying it's 1.7 billion or more, it could continue, and even within the terms of reference they hadn't even looked at how we might be able to bring those costs back. So we've been acting in a constructive way to try to pull the costs back, find the truth and pull the costs back.
The main contractor should pay back what is
look, I tell you, if that's what it comes out to, Brid, when it comes out in March, when all of us get to see a report, do I take it when the report comes out in March that you won't comment on it because you don't trust PwC to do the investigation? Will you just ignore the report?
Well, no,
is that what you're saying?
I think my comments would be very valid because I don't trust PwC, and I'm saying it now in advance of the report.
Would you disregard the report completely when it comes out?
Get back to the core issue here.
But we haven't heard from Hilda. I mean, like Hildegard, if I could just ask you, I
think if the nurses were to turn around and say, actually, the deal on offer isn't good enough, even if the union bosses recommend it, we say we don't want it, we want more.
I wouldn't be surprised because it isn't a good deal. And it doesn't give them the pay parity that they struck for. I do think, however, that they don't see the union leadership as being as somehow selling them out. They want explanations as to how they ended up with a deal that doesn't nearly meet their demands. So you'd be working for the first 4 years as a nurse without any pay increase. There is a new grade being created that will yield a 7 to 8% pay increase. But beyond that, the rest of the nursing profession doesn't gain anything from it. And the question remains, are we going to settle this dispute in a manner that will ensure that we recruit and retain the nurses we need to run a decent, functional, healthy
before we go
service.
to the break, I want to bring... Not giving them that.
Well, again, the ins and outs of this deal have to be discussed. And if it has points.
That's exactly what's in the statement. Did you read the Labour Court?
Where do you know
Did you read what Kevin Foley said? And he actually said if other unions want to do this, they can do it as well.
Where do you know the cynicism is coming from? Kevin Foley stitches up deals all the time. He presents deals to strike.
But you're screwing the new entrants who aren't members of the union. Do you not get the point? And we're private sector workers and all this who can't go on strike at all.
It hasn't been accepted yet. So you're preempting.
I'm saying it's
the outcome
unfair
of it.
to new entrants.
Can I maybe say something if we just calm down a small bit on this?
1.7 million private sector
Well, hey,
workers
I was in the
who are
private sector
competing
for-
in
I was in
firms
the private-
who can never go on strike because their business will go out.
Actually, sorry.
Ivan, it's extraordinary how hot under the collar you get about this, and you're not that hot under the collar about what happened.
Well, no, I know.
Sorry.
I'll put it like this.
Talking to someone who's
I
in the
feel
private
there's a
sector.
voiceless crew here, which are private sector workers.
I was
You're
in
the voice for them.
Brid, sorry. I was in the private sector from when I...
An opportunity to rent at discounted prices properties from the state, that they should be taking what they're offered rather than being picky about it.
Matt, would you spare me and live in the real world? This is a complete ruse by Murphy to distract from the housing crisis and the homelessness. He'd done this last year, by the way. In March last year, he did exactly the same thing. And I rooted it out tonight, a quote from Brendan Kenny, the head of the City Council here in Dublin, the City Council Housing Unit. He said the vast majority of households who turned down an offer accepted the second one. He added that people refusing the initial offer did not cause inordinate delays and it was not considered a particular problem by the local authority. 1 year later, and Murphy says, this is an awful problem, we have to get them off the list, leave them off them for 5 years. Unless he's trying to reduce the waiting lists again for the spin, which he's supposed to be really good at, and increase the homelessness to help the hotels and the B&B increase their profits. Or maybe it's a new student accommodation.
We will hear from Hildegard, but Darry, you're the opposition.
Under Mr Murphy's watch.
Okay.
And maybe he'd like to push all those people into the little boxes that were built for students all over Dublin 8 and Dublin 2.
Darra, you're the opposition housing spokesman. Is this a... Well, it's here the socialists are arguing for no tax on your home, which is the biggest capital asset that most people have. There's people with swimming pools in Castleknock with £1 million homes, and in Dunleary, and you won't tax them at all? It's ridiculous.
Sorry, let Brid respond.
Thank you.
Wealthy homes, why not tax them?
Can I just say...
No, let Brid speak. Well, no, I'm actually sure. You, Ruth Coppinger, Richard Boyd Barrett.
Are you sure you want to let me speak now? OK, well, you calm down and let me finish what I was going to say. There has been an increase in personal wealth in this country over the last 7 years of something like 300 billion. Now, that isn't in the pockets of the public sector workers, and it's certainly not in the pockets of the nurses.
It is at their own houses.
It is certainly not in the pockets of the nurses.
The
people who own houses, and where that increase is the vulture funds and the big companies who are gobbling up the property, driving up rent and pushing up the cost of housing, creating a housing crisis. And they are getting away scot-free. There has been loads of measures put in to alleviate the pressure on tax on these companies.
But let's be clear, but you're in favour of zero tax on big mansions in Dalkey.
I'm saying that there's a complete imbalance in the distribution of wealth in this country, and when the public sector workers like the nurses say we're not taking this anymore, we're working too long and for too little for too long.
Are you in favour of zero tax on big mansions in Dalkey?
I am not. I'm after saying to you I'm in favour of a wealth tax, and you're telling me and he's telling me that that's the family home. Well, it is not the family home.
Sorry, that is not what I said, Brid. What I said...
Very isolated areas, Donegal, Leitrim, Roscommon. Is it a good idea?
Well, the first thing I'd like to say is that it's pretty ugly and shocking to hear what happened. And the Gardaí tonight on the news, on the TV, were saying that this was a coordinated and well-planned attack, that the individuals responsible were in the area for a number of days, which indicates they're not from the area, that this isn't about local opposition of the people of Roosky, but it's about somebody whose agenda is race hatred. And they are determined to try and highlight this and bring problems to the people of Roosky on the basis of it. The good news is that I believe the response all day on local radio and within the village is that people are saying, this is not us, we do not want to see this happening. And like the last time when the hotel was put on fire, there was a major rally of solidarity and support outside the hotel.
But Hildegard, isn't the major issue here
going to be
that
repeated?
people are left in direct provision?